All right. Thank you. All right. Hey, to someone who has disabilities, is it possible to make it cooler in here? I smell us. Like, I smell this side more than I smell this side, but I smell us. It's like the trash can. It was right there. There it is. You need to put the trash can there for the drip. All right. If it doesn't bother you, it doesn't bother me. All right. Y'all ready? All right. Fantastic. Hey, let me say this. I just want to first say thank you to y'all. Y'all have been fantastic. It's been a pleasure of mine to meet so many of you and to be able to come here. As I tried to tell you on Sunday night, like it's a pretty surreal moment and just throughout the entire week to stand on this stage, knowing that I've sat in there so many times and then to be on this stage. But I just appreciate how you've been kind, but even beyond that you just went for it. And you, as I told you that first night, I wanted you to go big, and you did. So thank you for doing that. You have inspired me. You've blessed me just by seeing what you're doing. It's been easy to pray for you because of just how much how well you've responded. I also want to say, I said this on Sunday night, but I want to say again, thank you to everyone who made this happen, especially the people that are hidden. The administrative people and the people that we'll never see know that they were doing so much work. So yes, you can definitely clap for them. So I was saying today to Tom when we were hanging out this afternoon that I think it's just a marvel to me that through so many years and so much transition that this camp can continue to be a place where God is free to do what he wants to do in the lives of young people. And to me, that's a reflection of the consistent yes that's in the heart of the leadership that comes here year after year. So I appreciate that and just honor that in you. And last thing I want to say, I could do this all night. It's like Academy Awards acceptance speech, but I won't do it. Is some of you have made the joke that you thought that I had a bodyguard here. And it's been that big guy that walks around behind me and follows me around, that kind of stuff. And that's Jim Cagle, if you've never met Jim Cagle. He was my Bible study leader in high school. He was my cabin leader when I was here. So he's seen me at my worst. And he stayed with me through my worst. That's right. And he came to camp this week just to pray for me. And so that's been his job this week. And Jim, I just wanted to tell you that I would never have wanted to do it any other way. And I deeply appreciate all that you've done. It would have been different if you wouldn't have been here. So thank you for what you did. All right. I got my notebook out again. Is that all right? All right. It's not going to be very long because tonight's not going to be very long. It's going to be a little bit more of a devotional night tonight, like you were having something, quick instead of something real long. But I just have two things that I want to share, and again, we'll see what happens with these. But saw a picture of a boy. Oh, by the way, if you're visiting tonight, I've just been trying to listen to God for these kids out here and to see if he says anything, and then I just tell them. And then they can figure it out if it means something or not. And we've just been trying to learn God's voice in a very non-spooky way. Because God's not spooky. He's fantastic, but he's not spooky. And so just been trying to lead by example in this. So saw a picture of a boy, so it would be on this side of the room. And again, I'm not going to make you stand up on this one. This is just, if it counts for you, then it counts for you. But saw a boy, and it wasn't a specific face. I just knew it was a boy. And he was sleeping. And then I looked at his forehead, and I could see inside of his brain what was happening while he was sleeping. And I saw it's not a golden, I saw a key. And asked God, what does that mean? And I feel like there's at least one of you, maybe just one, that is still considering whether you want to drop your keys. As we talked about that first night, that you want to take that keychain and you want to drop them, and that you specifically had a dream about it. sometime this week about thinking about whether you should do that and that whole idea of surrendering to Jesus and dropping your keys. And if that's you, I feel like God will just let you know that he's not mad at you and that he's willing to catch your keys anytime you're ready to drop them. All right? And then the last one that I have is for A.K. Hambrick. Where is she? You're down over there? Yeah, I want you to come up here. All right, now while she comes up here, let me tell you about her. So I've known her since she was born, and her parents, Steve and Randall, are some of my best friends. That it's hard for me to fathom two other people that I really love more. Come on up. And so, yeah, you're all right. You're doing great. So far, you're doing great, yeah. So I got to pray for her last night. Was it last night? Okay. I prayed for her last night. She said, and is this going to be embarrassing to you?
No.
Great. I should have asked her that before, but I didn't get a chance. So I prayed for her last night. She said she wanted to hear God's voice better. And so I prayed for her. And then I told her, I said, hey, if you think that you hear something for someone out there, you just come and tell me, and then I'll pretend like I heard it, and then I'll share it. And if it lands, it lands, and then you'll know that it was for you. That's what I told her last night. So just now, when we were leaving the prayer meeting, she ran. She's a cross-country runner, so she runs. So she ran and found me. She goes, Clay, I got to tell you a story. And so she told me that she saw a girl here and felt like she heard something for her, and she shared it with her. And that girl said, someone just told me that exact same thing 5 minutes ago. And so she heard God's voice for one of her friends, or maybe not for one of your friends, but for someone that you knew. That's what just happened to her today. So we prayed for her last night, and then she heard that today, and she got to tell me that tonight. Isn't that fantastic? Yeah, right. Now stay up here, stay up here, stay up here.
Can I say something?
Yeah. You want to say something?
No, do I have to?
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
just would rather you finish out tonight than me. I'm just kidding. No, I'm going to talk. Okay. All right. No, you do not have to say anything. I thought you said you wanted to say something. I was like, man, she's going for it. All right. But when you told me that story, just right over there in Newton County or wherever we were, are we in Newton County?
Covington.
Right, but is Covington in Newton County? All right, that's what I was figuring. But so we were in Newton County. If you went to a prayer meeting, you understand that. And when you told me that story, I saw a golden egg for you, and it was in the little hay, that you would imagine that an egg was in hay, and it was large. And when I saw that picture, I felt like God said that He has birthed something in you this week, in a prophetic sense, in hearing His voice, and that the gifting that He's giving you to hear His voice is going to be at a gold standard, which is the highest standard that you could have. And then the cool thing was after I saw that picture of that golden egg, that I saw God sit on top of it. Not to smash it like y'all would do in morning time, but He sat on top of it to incubate it. And when I heard Him say that, or when I heard Him do that or see that, then I heard Him say that He was going to take care of it at His pace, and that there was no pressure for you to figure out when and how that was going to work, but that He was going to do that. But that was going to start for you this week. Sound good? AK, you're doing great. She's fantastic, by the way. If you didn't get to meet her, there's still a chance. That's for the girls in the room. Boys, don't do it. Right, Steve? That's right. There it is. Oh, that's fun. All right. Ready? Here we go. So, Sunday night, we dropped keys, right? Hopefully. There's at least one guy thinking about it, but you dropped some keys, right? And then we started to learn about how when we dropped our keys, we were going to enter in to the abundant life, that's what God has for us. That's what Jesus died for us, is to enter into that abundant life. And some of the ways that you can describe the abundant life, again, this wasn't an exhaustive list by any means, but some of the ways that you can understand the abundant life is that you can understand that you will live a life where you will be loved by God and you'll know it. Not just that you live a life that you're loved by God, because everyone lives a life where they're loved by God, but that in the abundant life, you know it. And it changes things in your life when you really know it. And also the abundant life is going to look like a life empowered by the Holy Spirit, where you have power to do things that you really couldn't do in and of your own strength. And then finally, last night, where it got all kind of wild up here, we talked about having a sound mind, and that you can live life with peace right in there, in between your two ears. That's part of the abundant life. So that's kind of where we've been. So tonight I want to leave you with this idea. It's not necessarily directly tied to the abundant life, but you'll see where it fits in that process. I want to talk to you about thirst. And I know in your realm, in your stage of life, y'all like to use the term thirsty to talk about people being ready to hook up. Is that correct? Yes. Like, I have a, what do you call those things? Bitmoji, and there's one that says, thirsty underneath it. You can send that to people. Is that correct? Now, how many of you have ever sent, I'm just kidding. I won't make you do that yet. But thank you for being honest. God saw that. Yep, there's honesty just flourishing throughout the room. Appreciate that. I don't want to talk to you about being thirsty for other people. There was a relationships talk earlier in the week with Play-Doh, I think. Is that correct? Yeah. So, a little too excited about that Play-Doh there, bud. All right. But anyway, I want to talk to you about being thirsty for God. Now, I want to read some verses for you and kind of share with you my journey in this. This is kind of like your message from the future. It's just, I'm going to let my mistakes be your wisdom. Okay? So in Psalm 42, it's going to come up on your screen, which turns into your Bible over there. It says, as the deer pants for the water brooks, so my soul pants for you, O God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. When shall I come and appear before God? And then that's David writing that. And then Psalm 63, he says, O God, you are my God. I shall seek you earnestly. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh yearns for you in a dry and weary land where there is no water. Now, I used to read those verses in college. And I used to come to things like this. And we'd go to conferences and have our services where I work now at Wesley. And this whole idea of thirst and hunger and passion for God were just so at the forefront of what we were doing. And it was at the forefront of what I wanted. I wanted to be known as someone who was thirsty for God. I wanted to have that thirst. And I wanted to feel that because it was apparent to me at that moment in my season of life that there was some kind of consistent feeling that people who were really hungry and thirsty for God carried with them all the time. You could just kind of hear it in the way they talked. You could see it in the way they worship. And then you start reading Bible verses like this, and it's like, man, I'm supposed to feel thirsty for God. I need that consistent, constant kind of experience, because look at what the writers of the Bible said. I mean, this guy's David. He's like, it's like a deer who's just so thirsty, right? And he's saying that his soul is yearning. Like there's got to be this feeling that I can at some point attain to, and then I'll be marked. I'll have that. I'll be able to carry that place of thirst for God. So I would get in my room, I'd go down to altars, and I'd ask God, I'd say, God, make me thirsty for you. God, make me thirsty for you. I want to just be thirsty for you. And when I would pray those prayers, I would wait for some type of experience to take place that would prove to me that I was thirsty. And often, I would just wait and nothing would happen. Just being as honest with you as I possibly can. And this went on for years and years and years. I just wait. And sometimes I would feel things. Sometimes I'd be at the altar and I'd be like, oh, maybe, But other times I'd be there and I'd be like, yeah, that kind of felt pretty good. But then it'd kind of go away, and so I'd be like, uh-oh. What happened? The shimmer just came off. I need to get back down to that altar, get back down on my knees, get back into that worship set, and try to get it back, because it seemed like that was what the Bible and that was what my friends were illustrating that was so important, that we just be thirsty for God, that we feel that thirst over and over and over. But unfortunately for me, I just didn't feel it that much. So I didn't feel thirsty for God very often, but you know what I did feel? Very condemned. Because I knew that I wasn't measuring up in some way. I knew that I was missing something. And so it would just litter my journals with prayers. God, please make me thirsty. Please make me thirsty. Please show me what's keeping me from being thirsty. I'll repent of anything you want me to. Just show me what I need to do to get thirsty for you. To feel thirst for you. Now, for you this week, it's probably been pretty easy. Now, I'm not saying this is 100% because I've talked to some of you who've been struggling with this, but I've seen you, y'all call this rushing the stage? Is that what y'all call that? Or do you have a name for it? I mean, y'all rush up here, right? And you worship real hard and you cry a ton, you know, and you hug each other too much probably, and there's just all this passion and feeling that's just being swirled up each night, every night. I've just watched you. I usually hide behind this speaker over here because I'm an introvert. I just will hide if I have the opportunity, and I just watch, right? And in this environment, the way that we've structured camp, the way that camp's always been structured, it makes that pretty easy to kind of feel that hunger, to feel that desire to really go after God. And your friends, the fact that we're all doing this in community, that you're not alone, you're not the only person up here doing this, but there's hundreds of you up here doing this, that makes it a little bit easier. And the worship team, the way that they're so gifted and anointed, and the way that they lead us, and the way that they pastor us as we sing, that makes it definitely easier. And the fact that you don't have your cell phones and haven't had them all week long really makes it easier for you to be hungry for God. I promise. But I need to let you know something. And I'm not trying to burst your weather balloon, as we heard about that guy this morning. Were you awake for that? It's a fantastic story, by the way. 16,000 feet up in the air in a lawn chair. Amazing. I am stealing that so fast. This afternoon I've been thinking how I could use that as fast as I can when I get back to Athens. But first I'll show it to my kids. But anyway, I don't want to burst your bubble and just make you feel terrible, but you ready for a news flash? Your feelings are going to go away. The euphoria that you've had is going to go away. And guess what? In 15 hours, all of this goes away. It's gone. And I'm not trying to be mean, but you're going to have that feeling of, where'd it go? What happened? And there's this trap that you can fall into, that you think that you've got to be a Christian like a camel. And you just got to come to these kind of events and come to these kind of experiences and create kind of environments wherever you are so that you can drink as much as you possibly can. Just drink as much as you possibly can. Get as much as you can. And then you're just going to have to just turn and make it and start to leak and start to have all those feelings wane, and then hope that you can get to the next event before you really start to drift away. And I don't want you to fall in that trap. Because that's not the way that you're meant to live. You're not meant to go from, I want to collect as many journal entries I can this week. I want to collect as many goosebumps I can this week. I want to collect as many napkins that I've snotted in this week. And then when I get all that stuff together, I know that these feelings are just going to make it through the hard times. I know these feelings are just going to make it through when it gets boring. I know these feelings are just going to make it through when I don't have any of my friends around. And I'm just going to let you know, they won't. They will not make it. And you're not meant to be a camel Christian. That's not what Jesus died for you to be, is a camel Christian. Does that make sense? And here's what I don't want you to do. I don't want you to live under condemnation like I used to for so many years, trying to get to a place and trying to earn myself to that place and trying to figure out what kind of magic formula I can mix up in order to get there to where I can have this constant state of feeling thirsty for God. And I really don't want you to do this. Go home in a day and in a week or in a month and you feel all those feelings and they're just gone. And instead of saying, I'm condemned or whatever, you just go, I knew that wouldn't last. And you just take this week and you take all what God's done and you just write it off. And you just go back to normal life. A life where you're not concerned and not trying to live out of that understanding that you're loved by God, a life where you're living a powerless life, and where you're living tossed or tormented back and forth in your mind. That's what I don't want for you. Does that make sense? So I'm going to tell you something that is true. You ready? Psalm 42, Psalm 63, any other passage that you want to find where someone's just talking about how thirsty and hungry they are for God, they are not in there to describe to you or to set a standard for you of what you're supposed to feel all the time. They're in there as expressions, as responses to the need that every person has all the time. Because you will not have feelings of thirst for God all the time. But I will tell you this, you will always have a need for God. Always have a need for God. David wasn't saying, I feel thirsty for God all the time. You should read some of the Psalms. He was certainly not feeling thirsty all the time. He was a little salty a lot of the times. He was ticked most of the time. He was frustrated. He was not feeling this thirst and hunger for God all the time. He had a lot of different feelings. But when he's describing that he's thirsty for God, what he's describing is he's having a feeling that is coming out of the truth that he knows that constantly he's in need of God. Constantly he's in need of God. Your soul, just like David's soul, is in constant need of God. Your feelings won't always match that. Your soul never changes in its need for God. Your feelings always change in its reflection of your understanding of that need. I promise you, you cannot put your faith in your feelings. You have to put your faith in the truth. And then if your feelings catch up, it's a bonus. And if they don't, it's still okay. Because you have the truth to hold on to. Let me show you some verses here in the Bible that will just try to help you understand this need that we have. Can we put those up on the screen? John 6:63, this is red letters. Jesus says, it is the Spirit that gives life. The flesh, which is in and of our own strength, is no help at all. We're in need of help if we can not do anything for ourselves. Let's do the next one. You can just keep these going. Right after I read it, you can do the next one. Yet for us there is but one God, the Father, from whom all things, and we exist for him. And one Lord, Jesus Christ, by whom are all things, and we exist. You exist. You breathe tonight through him. You constantly need Jesus. Let's do the next one. Acts 17. This is Paul's preaching to Athens. God, who made the world and all things in it, since he is Lord of heaven and earth, does not dwell in temples made with hands, nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all people life and breath and all things. Let's go to the next one. And he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on the face of the earth, having determined their appointed times and the boundaries of their habitation, that they would seek God, if perhaps they might grope for him and find him, though he is not far from each of us. That is awesome. Verse 28, for in him we live, we move, and we exist. And the final one is, apart from me. This is the red letters. Apart from me, you can do nothing. You need God. I need God. It doesn't matter what your feelings tell you. Your thirst for God does not come from a feeling you have. It comes from a need you know that you have all the time. And at that point, you can be thirsty for God without ever feeling it. You can pursue God and move towards God without any kind of impetus from any type of experience or any type of feeling. You don't need it because you have the truth. And that truth will spur you on regardless of how you feel. And I just want to let you know something. You will never outgrow your need for God. Certainly in years, but not even in maturity. You will not outgrow this. This is how we function and how we will function for the rest of our lives. We will constantly have a need for God. About 15 years ago, I was in a college ministry conference, and Louis Giglio was doing a breakout session. It was at North Point Church, and y'all know who Louis Giglio is? Okay. He was doing a breakout session, and the breakout session was entitled, How to Communicate Effectively. Now, if Louis Giglio is going to teach a breakout session on how to communicate effectively, they should have thought this through, because there was a room for about 800 people, and there was 3,000 people trying to get into that room, because there was 4,000 people at the conference. And we were all just trying to pry ourselves in there. And I was in this little corner. I was sitting with, like, tucked in as tight as I can, which is pretty tight, because look at me, tiny. And I had my journal out, and everybody had their journal out. They were just ready and waiting to hear Louis' keys to help us communicate like him. We were just ready to rip off what he was doing so that we could go do it and then become Louis. That was why everyone was in there ready to write down. He walked up on the stage, and this is what he said. I promise you, this is what he said. He said, I could try to teach you some kind of, like, pattern to know how to develop on how to communicate, but Andy's better at that, so I won't do that. And I could try to teach you about, like, ethos and pathos and those things that I learned in seminary about communicating, but I don't remember what those things mean. He said, here's what I do. Every time before I go speak, I get on my knees and I lift my hands up in the air and I say, God, I need you. You're going to have to come and help me. And then I go and speak. And then when I'm finished, I go back to where I was, get on my knees, lift up my hands and say, how'd I do? And he walked off the stage. That was it. That was our how to effectively communicate talk. And we're all sitting there, like, ready to write something down, and I didn't write anything down. Nothing. That was it. It was 2 minutes long. That was 2-minute breakout session. Now, that was 15 years ago. I want you to fast forward to 2 years ago when one of my good friends from Athens moved from Athens to go help Louis plant the church, Passion City Church. And so they did an event, one of those, like, regional events in Athens to kind of promote Passion. And my friend said, hey, why don't you come and early we'll have dinner you can have dinner with all of us, and then we can hang out and all that kind of stuff. I was like, that's cool. So I went and had dinner with their team and where we were going to have the event. And then they said, hey, we're going to pray before we go and do the thing. I was like, all right. And I was just sitting there, and he was like, hey, you can come. I was like, great. So I'm standing there, and it's myself and then the Passion worship team and the people that do the administrative work to make all that stuff happen, and then Louis. We're standing in a circle. There's about 25 of us. And he's like, just pray however you want to, and then we'll just wrap it up at the end. So everyone just kind of starts to pray. I bow my head and start to pray a little bit, but honestly, then I opened my eyes because I wanted to see how they all prayed. I was just curious. I just wanted to watch. And asked God to say, hey, I'm not going to do very much here for you, but I just want to watch. And so I just opened my eyes, and I just started to look around the room and watch how people were praying. I think it's interesting. And I wasn't judging them. I was just learning, and observing. I'm an observer. So I watched the worship team pray. If you ever wonder how the worship team prays, I'll tell you. And I remember it vividly. And then I get around the room, and I don't see Louis. And I'm like, where'd he go? And so I kind of start to bob and weave a little bit, acting like I was praying, really. But I was, like, looking around, trying to find where he went. Because I wanted to see if he was praying or not, or how he was praying. And I finally see some feet over in the corner. And so I bob over there, and there's Louis Giglio on his knees with his hands up in the air, facing the wall, praying. And I do not remember a word that he said that night. He taught for an hour. I don't remember a word. I will never forget seeing him do what he said that he did 15 years before that. That's how he gets ready to talk, because he knows that he needs God. No matter the fact that he's Louis Giglio, no matter the fact that he's Passion, he needs God. And it doesn't matter what you pull off or what God calls you to, you're going to need God. And it will not matter how you feel as long as you know that you need God. And at that point, you can be thirsty for God and pursue him and enter in and stay in that abundant life that he died for you to have. Now, this is how we're going to end tonight. This is how we're actually going to end the week. And you're going to be like, are you serious? And guess what? I'm very serious. Okay? In the Old Testament, there was this thing that they would do when God would do something for them, and like a big battle that they won, or God kind of shows up and does his thing. If you ever read the Old Testament, God does some crazy things. So when they would do that, they would take a big stone, because they had these, roads that would lead them to different cities, and they would take these big stones and put them by the road, pour oil all over them, because they loved oil back in the Old Testament, and they would name them. And what those were called Ebenezer. So if you ever sing that hymn and it says, "Here I raise my Ebenezer," and you're like, Scrooge? Right? You never understood what you were talking about. What you were talking about was this idea of this stone of help, or this stone of remembrance. And it's what they would do in the Old Testament. And they would put them by the road and then name them and etch a name into them, so that any time they walked by that stone, they would remember what God did for them. And when they would walk by, if they were with anyone, they would then tell the story of what God did for them, especially their children. And that's how they passed down the oral history of God's help to the generations to generations. That's how they remembered it, were through these stones. They didn't have journals. They just had these big stones. They would just put them along the road. They're called Ebenezers. Here I raise my Ebenezer. Okay? So tonight, I want to give you an Ebenezer for thirst. It's going to be something that we physically do together, but it's not something that is just supposed to stay physical. It's supposed to remind you of a spiritual truth, and that spiritual truth is this: you need God. Your soul right now is thirsty for God. It's in need of God, regardless of how you feel. It's in need of God right now. And in 5 minutes, it will be in need of God. And in 5 hours, it will be in need of God. And in 50 years, it will be in need of God. It will not change. Your feelings will always change. Your need for God will never change. So I want us to do this. And what we're going to do, where are the interns or vinterns or whichever ones you're called? If you come down to the front, over here. Why don't you give them a hand while we go there. We're gonna send them up the. Go ahead and take them up. That was like you're doing an offering plate. Okay, just take a bowl and go up there and pass it out like it's an offering plate. All right. So, what the interns are doing, they have styrofoam bowls, and in them there are salt packets. In little individualized salt packets like you get at Wendy's or wherever you eat. I just remember these at Wendy's when I was very young. I don't know. Just take those bowls and kind of disperse them like they're offering plates. We're not taking up an offering, by the way, but that's not a bad idea. All right, and there should be some bowls on this side for the adults here. You don't get left out. We're going to go there. So, how are we doing on salt? All right, I think it's coming your way. If it gets to the end and there's extras, then keep taking them back. Keep taking them back. Raise your hand if you don't have a salt packet. All right, the back doesn't have a salt packet. You don't have a salt packet here in front? Oh, you do. Great, thank you. Everyone have a salt packet? Great, thank you for that. All right, shh. Keep your hand raised if you don't have a salt packet. Did we run out? We've got a bag, a massive bag over there. Did we run out? Everybody good? If you do not have a salt packet, keep your hand raised. Where's the worship? If the worship team is hiding, can someone find them and send them up here? There they are. Great. Thank you. What's your name? Very helpful, Abigail. All right. All right. Let me get your attention. Let me get you back. I'm telling you, I need 3 minutes of your time. Then we're finished. Shh. Thank you, Carmen. All right. So what I'm going to do is this, or what I want you to do is this. When I tell you, I want you to tear your salt packet open and put it in your mouth. Now, let's just wait. I'm serious. My 7-year-old has done this already, and he handled it. So just to kind of give you a place where you can stand on, if my 7-year-old can handle it, you can, okay? It's not going to kill you. It is going to make you thirsty, and that's the point. Now, my 7-year-old has been asking me every day since I've been here, have you done the salt? 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 He is so excited for y'all to eat this salt. And tomorrow, I get to tell him that he calls you college kids, because anyone that's older than him, he considers you college kids, because that's my world. Have the college kids eaten the salt yet? And so, you're about to. Now, here's why we're doing this. Shh. Here's why we're doing this. Because this is an Ebenezer for you. You're about to taste salt, and it will sting a little bit, it'll burn a little bit, and when you swallow it, it'll make you thirsty. And that is a physical representation of a spiritual state that you are thirsty for God all the time. And next time you see one of these, guess what you're going to think about? And next time you put salt on your food, what you're going to think about? You're going to think about your need for God. I did this about 7 years ago, and I think about this every time I look at salt. And so my prayer for you is that every time you see salt from here on out, you will be reminded of your need for God. And you'll be reminded of how God responds to that need. Because I'm going to read you a passage that I believe is a corporate word for all of us this week, and how God is going to respond to us when we move towards Him in understanding that we know that we need Him, okay? So I'm going to count to 3. I want you to tear it open and then eat it, and then I'm going to pray for you. Please don't yell or scream. Just act like adults, even if you don't know if you are one. And I'm going to pray for you. Right when I say 3, I'm going to tell you to open it, and then I'm going to start praying. And after I finish praying, I'm going to read this passage, and then we're going to sing 3 songs to celebrate the fact that God's good enough that He's going to respond to us in this way that I'm going to read this passage as we thirst for Him. All right, you ready? 1, 2, 3, eat your salt. All right. Father, I pray right now that you would come. And God, as that salt goes down their throat, as that salt stays in their mouth, Lord, as it burns, as it stings, as it makes them thirsty, as it makes them cough, God, I pray that this would be a reminder, God, of how thirsty their souls are. God, I pray that it would be a reminder of how much they need you. I pray, Jesus, that this would be a reminder, God, of how desperate their insides are for them to live, to move, and to exist. And God, I thank you that you've given us this word in Isaiah 55 to show us what happens when we thirst. This is Isaiah 55, 1 and 2. It says, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. If you have no money, come, buy and eat. Come, buy wine and milk without money and without cost. Why do you spend money for what is not bread and your wages for what do not satisfy? Here's your part. Listen carefully to me and eat what is good, and delight yourself in abundance. When you thirst for God, regardless of whether you feel it or not, and you move towards God, God places before you abundance to delight in. It's your gift from God, and it will always be there. You will never get enough. He will always have more to give you. So let's worship tonight and celebrate the fact that as we move towards God, He moves towards us in abundance.